Welcome back to the Grow Like a Mother podcast. Today, I am here with my dear friend Kathie Donovan. She is a happiness expert and she's a celebrated author, speaker, coach, and broadcaster. Um, Kathie is on a mission. She's on a mission to help our world evolve in the direction of more goodness, more kindness, more courage, and more positivity. Her work is a call to action to unlearn what we think we know to be true so that we can really see our true potential and create a beautiful life of our own design. So, Kathie, welcome to the podcast. We are so aligned, you and I.
Yeah, and there's no question about that, Jill. I love what you talk about. It's very much parallel to what I do as well. And, our audiences they overlap in a way because, you know, the people that I am speaking to are generally women 45, 40 plus, and you're talking to young moms. And so we all have all that in our lives. So
Yeah.
it's totally relevant. And, all of the same ideas that I teach apply to people of any age. So I think that's really cool. And I'm really grateful that we met one another and that you're pursuing this really important work in the world because God knows we need it.
We need it. And like you said, it's intergenerational. It's
Yeah.
advice that serves all women and all people in all stages of life, which I love. But I don't actually know this story. I'd love for you to share with me, like, and the listeners, but mostly for me. How did you get into the work? Like, at what point in your life did you start to really like realize you could design it, take control, and focus on the happiness factor?
Well, most things that are those quote unquote light bulb moments come from some sort of problem or out of some sort of suffering. That's how personal development works. We don't grow unless we feel like we're being squeezed through a keyhole. And we don't want to go through the keyhole, which is why many of us never do involve ourselves in personal development. But for me, it came from having, growing up in a pretty dysfunctional family, bless everybody. All the work has been done to put it all where it belongs. But my dad was an alcoholic. My mother they had lost two babies before my sister was born. And I think there was just that underlying current of undiagnosed depression back in those days, back in the 40s, if you can believe it. That's when my parents were doing their best to raise their family. And so there really wasn't the support there is today. I'm so grateful that we've evolved to the point where we recognize these things have such an emotional impact on folks. So my parents did their very best to do what they had to do, but I grew up in that as my true north. These people who were really suffering at the root of it. I've always been a very sensitive, very curious person. And so, my life took on a flavor of attracting the wrong types of people into my life in the sense that I didn't have high self-esteem. I didn't know my value and my worth. And so I drew that to me. I drew people who didn't respect me, who didn't have, acknowledge my self-worth, etc. And so you have to really kind of hit a place where you're like, ah, this isn't going to make me feel good. This is never going to make me feel good. I'm never going to meet my perfect partner. I'm never going to feel really good in my life. And that's what sustainable happiness is about for me. It's about feeling good in your life. It's not about trinkets and trash and money in your bank account. It really is that. So I set out, and it was, by coincidence, I began to encounter the great teachers like Dr. Wayne Dyer and Louise Hay, all of these people who were on this leadership role of in personal development. And then I discovered Christian Larson, who wrote the Optimist Creed, which is the basis for the Optimist Club throughout North America, where it's all about, focusing on thinking right thoughts, they called it, thinking right thoughts. And so I began to recognize, and then The Secret came out, the book in the movie. So a friend of mine brought it to me. We watched it together, and I was gobsmacked because I recognized how my thoughts had created the reality I had been living. And the thoughts I learned to think were the ones that my parents taught me to think. The world around me taught me to think. And so the results were the result of what I was thinking, which was misery, not lack of worthiness, et cetera, et cetera. So the journey began back then. I mean, I was probably in my late 20s, early 30s when I started on this stuff because I needed to unpack why was I not feeling happy? What was going on in my life and how could I turn that around? So I studied all of these people. I read and read and read, and then I practiced and practiced and practiced with these ideas. And I started to see things shift around. I met my husband. He's an angel sent from heaven. And it was a match for me because I was on that journey, and we're all in a process, right, Jill? It's not one and done. So we're all in a process. But I began to see that there was a lot of power in this. And over time, I decided on these 8 ideas that I kind of grabbed from all the teachings. And I developed what I would call a development group, focus group, and we met over 2 years and practiced with the ideas I wrote about in my first book. And that's really the short story of how I got there, because it changed everything in my life. How I thought, what I focused my attention on changed everything in my life. And now the results I'm seeing are a result of all that good stuff.
Yeah. And how cool is it when you do start to see those shifts and you're like, oh, I can control this. Oh, and then it's like you've got the gauge of how happy you want to be, right? Like there's always external circumstances, but having the tools to
Yes.
really react in a way that feels aligned to you. I want to just make sure that the audience heard you say the word sustainable happiness. Can you dive into that? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, I call it sustainable happiness because when we focus on the ideas I teach, it is sustainable. Whereas the happiness we've been conditioned to look for or conned into thinking we deserve or should have is something we chase. It's external to us. It's dependent on other people. It's dependent on circumstances. It's dependent on the money in our bank account. All of those things determine how we're going to feel. Really, that doesn't make sense to me anymore. What happens on the inside of me, the principles that I teach, starting with gratitude, learning to be grateful, sounds so cheeky. It sounds so cliche, but it is the foundation for what I call sustainable happiness. Because if you can't appreciate where you are now, you're not going to attract more of the good things into your life. You're going to continue to chase after what it is you think you should be going for. And, Jill, with social media and all of the things, all of the input we have today, it's really crowded and it's really difficult. So you cut through all that noise by you staying in your lane, focusing on your stuff, starting with gratitude and then tacking on courage, the courage to be this bold individual who's not going to buy into the con job anymore. You're going to be courageous because every one of us has been given gifts to open. You're going to start to open your gifts and you're going to see, oh, I didn't know I could do that. Well, I didn't know. And then you're going to find other people who respect that about you, et cetera, et cetera. Then I talk about like surrendering the old stories that don't serve you any longer so that you can create space for the ones that are aligned with where you are today. Because the one thing is, as human beings, we're always meant to be growing and learning. That's our job.
That's the
The only
point.
thing we can control are our thoughts. That's the point of life, is to learn and grow. So as we learn and grow, the stories we told ourselves about ourselves 10 years ago no longer serve us. So we need to surrender those stories to create space for ones that make sense. And then we always want to practice with kindness and compassion toward ourselves first, and then toward everybody else. And then I talk about forgiveness as a superpower, because we're forgiving for our own freedom, not for anybody else. We do it for ourselves. And then lastly, it's having healthy boundaries in our lives, in all of our relationships, so people know how far to go. We know where the line is. We know how to stand up for ourselves. And it just put all together is like Lego. It just works. It's
It
amazing.
does. And it's so cool that these core foundational like pillars basically of life, if you put them into practice, you can see results come. And it's not like, I always tell people too, it's not overnight, right? It's like building a muscle. You have to be committed to making the change and really, really buy into these ideas, because so many of us, I think, we know, quote, right? Like we know we should be grateful, but until you embody it and until you bring it into like a real part of you, it's not going to do its magic. But when you put all these pieces together, it is magic. And you
It is.
have like, you're the magician. That's what I love.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because what people don't realize is, and especially women, because women are the true leaders in our world. Let's not forget that. Women are the leaders. And we think by controlling everything like air traffic controllers, we'll get there, we'll get it done. But the fact of the matter is, the only thing we have control over are the thoughts we choose to think. So forget about trying to manage everybody else's business and get back in your lane and focus on you and what you're grateful for and how you can share your beautiful gifts in the world.
Absolutely. And uncovering, I think a lot of people need to hear that too, that they do have beautiful gifts because we can get bogged down, especially now, like you referenced in like social media world, the comparison, it's so real. And the mom guilt, like growing up now and parenting in this age, there is too much information. There is too much stimulus around us. We don't recognize the innate gems that we already have because we're too
Yeah.
busy looking at other people, right? Do you have any advice that you give people on like comparison and just like staying in your lane, like you put it?
Yeah, I think it's just another way. What you've just described is just another way for women to feel they're not enough. You're not enough of a mom. You don't do this and that and that and this. Your snacks aren't perfect. You don't make star shapes for your kid. Like, come on. So
Yes.
we need to bring it back to the simple humanity. Humanity is really what connects us. This idea that we're all beautiful beings in bodies. That's really the truth of who we are. And so we need to not feel that we're having to be like Kim Kardashian or whoever the flavor is. That's show business, and it's wonderful and I have no problem with it, but I know the difference. I know that my joys are super simple, and your joys are too. Wherever you decide, like this morning before our chat, I lit a candle because that really makes me happy. It's very simple things that are going to make us feel good. And we need to acknowledge, like, first of all, I think a lot of women don't even know what that is, what lights me up, what makes me feel good. Focus on that and find the little small things throughout your day that you can do, and you can do them. You're the time management specialist. You show people how they can make time, because Louise Hay taught me everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. It's what you do with that time that makes the difference. So it really is important to find your lane. First of all, you got to find your lane. What is your lane? What are your abilities? What's your skill? What's your gift? Who are you as a person? Because as women leaders, because we all are, it's very hard for us to take that power. We've been conditioned, I say conned, to think we need to be small, not have a voice, et cetera, et cetera. When really, we don't have to be idiots about it. We don't have to scream at the top of the mountaintop, because it's by our example that our children are going to learn from us what it is to be a happy, healthy human being.
Right.
It's by our example that our grandchildren are going to. A lot of women ask me in midlife if I work with teenagers because they're having problems with their kids. And I say, your kids are watching you. So let's set you on a path that makes you feel good. What do you do for you? And very often it's like, because we've been trained to do things for everybody else and put ourselves last. So I would say that find your lane, find ways to be grateful for your day, find little small things that light you up, only you, just for you. And it can't be your children. It has to be stuff in the world that really makes you feel good. And for every one of us, it'll be something different.
Yeah. So well said. And it makes me think too about, I mean, learning from people who studied and taught personal development in decades past. They're saying the same things as people are saying now. I'm
For sure.
reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill in 1935. Like he's saying
Yeah.
the same thing. So generationally, it makes me think, okay, these tools are good for us. They're going to be good for our kid in the examples that we set in the home, for our community, right? But I've noticed recently that the generation above me, my aunts, my cousins, my mom, her friends, they're now being influenced because this information is more widely available. And of course, I'm shouting it from the rooftops all the time. And so I just wonder, like, what's your perspective on how we can maybe teach not only our kids, but our parents and help them heal because they didn't have access to this? I mean, unless
Mm-hmm.
they went looking for it, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, or unless they had some reason to connect with it. Usually it's, as I said before, it's through suffering or having some problem you want to solve. So here's the thing. Every one of us has a journey to take in life. And every one of us has bumps and detours and streams and bridges to cross. Every one of us. Doesn't matter what your generation is. When you have the goods, when you understand the gold that is this truth of sustainable happiness, you practice it. And you shift the energy in your relationships with everybody around you by doing so, because now you're going to be more grateful, you're going to be more forgiving, you're going to be more compassionate. That's who you're going to be. And everybody around you is going to match that energy. So you don't have to teach them anything, especially older people, because often people feel like they know what they know, and that's enough for me. And I mean, I work with a lot of people who are over 55 and the work I do with the Wellings. And it's something we want to help open minds, because open minds and open hearts are willing to learn, but fear makes us close off. So as people get older, sometimes they fear learning something because they may think they're going to feel stupid or not enough again. And they feel like, well, I've got this, I'll stick with this. So we don't want to force anything on anybody. We want to be the example. That's what inspiration in action is all about. It's being the example for everybody. So maybe what happens is, if you have an aunt or somebody in your life who's older, who struggles, maybe you just need to give them a little bit more kindness, expecting absolutely nothing in return. Maybe you need to send them a random card to thank them for being a lovely human being. This type of thing really has an impact. And when we practice kindness, we know that research tells us it impacts more than just the person you're being kind to. It impacts other people. And that person receiving your kindness may tell somebody or do something kind for somebody else. So it really is about us owning our power as women leaders and practicing these ideas to influence the energies around us in other people. And then with our boundaries, we never succumb to the BS that anybody wants to give us, whether it's our mom or whatever it is. We like, with kindness and full respect, it's like, nope, not available for that garbage anymore. Thank you. So it's, it is work, but it's your work. You can't change anybody else, nor should you want to, nor should you try. And you should never think you have to fix anybody, because nobody's broken. They're just on their own journey. They're doing them. And if you can hold space for them, great, but you can't get in and take anything off their journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And the journeys intertwine and then they weave, right? Which is the cool thing.
Yes.
I really like that about relationships too, is that sometimes people are really close and in the same cycle, the same part of the journey. And then sometimes they veer off and then they come back, or they don't, especially with family that you're sort of with your whole life, right? You have these moments of closeness and then you're in different stages. And I think that that's really valuable to remember that.
Yeah, and just because people are your family doesn't mean you have to be on the same page with them, or you have to be even in the same room with them. You got to recognize your value first.
Mhm.
So that's something to keep in mind, because too often people, out of guilt, which is a useless feeling, do things with their families that don't make them feel good. Well, that's up to you, but it's not ever going to make you feel good. They're not ever going to see your value if you never think they're going to see your value. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. It was funny. I just finished Arthur Brooks' new book, Build the Life You Want. And
Mhm.
one of the things, and I keep hearing him on podcasts, and one of the things that he always says is enjoyment is one of the pieces of happiness. But to enjoy something, you have to have the pleasure. It needs to bring you pleasure, but you also have to have a social component. You need to have people around you, and you need to make a memory. And so it's not just pleasure alone that gets you the enjoyment, it's the people and it's the memory. And so if we can really focus spending our time in situations and put ourselves in situations that we're with people that we love and we're making memories, it'll automatically move us out of those situations that we're going to from, guilt or feeling like we should. You don't
Mhm.
often it's easier to go towards something than to try to cut something out. You'll cut it out just by natural consequence, right?
Yeah, your energy is going to shift. So
Yeah.
if you shift your mindset when you go to events, you're going to be a different person. You're not going to be available for the BS, if there's BS, whatever it is. You're just not going to be available for it. And you just remind yourself, keep reminding yourself of who you are, what your value is when you're in those situations that can make you feel uncomfortable, but don't give anybody your power. And one thing I like to say is, it might sound a little bit woo-woo to people who don't understand that everything is energy. It's physics. It's not something I made up. But protect that energy that you work so hard for and so hard to be. And in the practice you do every day, whatever it is you do, protect your energy so that other people can't come in and slam you, or can't come in and make you feel any certain way. You are in charge of all of that when your energy is protected.
What are some of the ways that you protect your energy? Because I've got my little like routines and tactics and rituals, if you will, but I'm curious to know what some of yours are.
Well, I use a bubble. I use a bubble, and my bubble, I place a bubble around me. It's sometimes it's white light. Sometimes I'm really into sparkly things, so I sometimes put sparkles in that bubble. And before I go out into my day, I will put that around me. And sometimes I'm not mindful and I forget to do it. But when I go to an event or I go where there are lots of people, I make sure to protect my energy because it can leak out and people can get in there, and I don't want to feel their stuff. I want to feel mine. It's not any disrespect to anybody. You do you, but I need to protect the gold that I've mined for. And just putting myself in a bubble, I put my car in a bubble. I ask, make my day safe, get me where I need to go. I do those sorts of things and make everything go well today. Whatever I'm meant to learn, I need to have the experience to learn from. So this radical acceptance, the idea of radical acceptance of life as it is, instead of always trying to be that air traffic controller, really makes such a difference. So if we protect ourselves and we go out in our beautiful selves, I think generally speaking, we're going to have a good outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, if you expect it too. If
Yeah,
you show up with intention, expecting for things to be in your highest good, to go, the
right.
way that they should, and you're going to get positive things, then you're going to find those things. It's like with gratitude where we started, which is interesting to bring it back to that. But when I started practicing gratitude, I found so many more things to be grateful for because I was on the lookout. And that's a scientific part of our reticular activating system is literally that's its job, right? To look for things we tell it is important.
Yeah.
And so you can use that to your advantage in things like gratitude or kindness, or if you're manifesting something and you're trying to bring something into the world, it is the more that you focus on it and expect it, the more you're going to see it because it's already there, right?
Yes.
There's so much out there for us. We can only
Yes.
process as much as we can process in the human brain.
Mhm.
So you have to tell your mind what it is that's important for you to come through the filters.
Yes.
It's already
Yes.
there.
Yes. It's already there.
Yeah. Okay, so this has been so incredible. I want to give you a chance to be able to tell the audience how we can learn more from you, where to find your books, all that. But before, I just want to know if there's any last thoughts, anything that wants to come through is like just a this has to be said, like I want you to hear this. Is there anything
Oh,
that's
yes. Yes. The most important thing to remember or to learn is that you are important and you matter,
hmm,
because especially women don't recognize that we are important and we matter. We put everybody else's needs ahead of ours. And really, we have to make sure our needs are being met. If we want to raise children who understand the value of feeling good in their life, that's what we have to do. So you are important and you matter is the underlying message of everything I teach everybody. And I think it's really something that, when you repeat it to yourself and you remind yourself that you are important and you matter, as you've just said, you'll see more reasons why you're important and you matter.
absolutely. Thank you for that. It makes me think, sorry, I'm going to go on a tangent before we wrap up. It makes me think, as you said, of repeating it to yourself. Do you use affirmations? Like, is that something that you find helpful? Me too.
Every day,
Yeah.
every morning. And it sounds kooky, but I make a glass of lemon water to start my day. And I say my affirmations into that water. There's a whole other conversation there about the magic of water, but that's what I do. And I have a long list. It's all alphabetical. It's kooky. I love it. And it just helps elevate my energy to start the day.
That's fantastic. I love it. And there are these tools, and this is, like you said, a whole other conversation, but water is one of those mediums that really like water can hear us and water can change and react. And like I do the same thing, but I do it verbally because when you speak, you're changing vibration, right? And so
Yes.
for me, it's very important that my affirmations are out loud. And I
Yeah.
do that every day. And it's these extra little pieces as you dive into personal development, and you'll sort of pick up these things that just supercharge it. It reminds me of
Yeah.
like in the Super Mario Brothers or something when you like you get the coins or you up and you get big or get
Yep.
powers.
Level. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
there are these little things that as you dive in, if you're listening and you're like, that's what I want, I'm curious, I want to get Kathie's book, I want to see what this is all about. Like as you start, you unravel and it's never ending. It's just this lifelong journey.
Yeah. We're all beautiful works in progress. I love that.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So, tell us where you like to hang out online, where we can find your books. If people want to learn from you, how can they work with you? at this point in time? Are you offering like group sessions, or I know you do retreats? Just tell us all the things.
Yeah. Okay. So first thing is my website, kathiedonovan.com, is where you'll find information about my books and my blog and my podcast. So I've started season 2 of my podcast. It's now called A Woman's Guide to Happiness, and it's wherever you get your podcasts. Either look for it by the title or by my name, however you do that. And I hang out on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as well. And I do a retreat twice a year at the Wakefield Mill Inn. I have one tentatively booked for the 4th of May, 2024. And as long as there's interest, I will go ahead with it. So if people want to contact me through the website, through Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and I will send them information about the event. It's a 1-day retreat. And yeah, and I'm working on a new book, Jill. It's called You Look Good for Your Age and Other Things We Should Never Say Again. So,
I love that.
so, we're talking to the souls of ageless beings because, age is nothing. It doesn't matter. You're just here. And if you're here and you're learning and growing, that's fantastic. So come and learn and grow with me because that's what I'm doing. And if I can help you, I'm happy to help you. I take a limited number of coach clients. I take 5 at any time. I have 2 spots available right now for people who get what I do and are interested in learning more about how they can up-level their sustainable happiness.
So wonderful. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I can't wait to have your new book and read it and just dive in because that sounds so fantastic.
Thank you.
It's really been a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for your time.
Likewise, a real pleasure talking with you too, Jill. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.